For today's In Focus, we travel to Runnymede in Surrey, in the south of England. This is a National Trust site, but to the casual observer it may not be immediately apparent why this field, around 4 miles from Windsor, is important. Just up from the riverbank is a monument to a very important moment in history. For it was here, on the 15th of June 1215, that so-called Bad King John signed a very important document. The signing of the Magna Carta broke the monarch's absolute power and ushered in an age of freedom and democracy, values which other countries would later adopt as their own. No, despite what we used to be told in school, things weren't that simple. For example, Magna Carta wasn't even the name of the document signed at Runnymede. Now, one thing which is true is that King John found himself cornered by angry barons and the church. Liv will go into this in more detail later this week. And it is true that King John was forced to sign a document. Initially, he was confronted with a list of grievances known as the Articles of the Barons. Through conversations and negotiations with Archbishop Langton, the king eventually agreed to sign the Charter of Liberties. This was written up and signed on the 15th of June 1215. Amongst its contents were statements such as Clause 25, "Every county, hundred, wapentake, and tithing shall remain at its ancient rent without increase." This was a document for the barons, to increase their freedom and limit their tax liabilities. But King John was annoyed at how his hand had been forced, and he sent messengers to the Pope in Rome. Pope Innocent III was very alarmed by developments, and on the 24th of August 1215 he issued a document known as a Papal Bull. He described the Charter of Liberties as illegal, unjust, harmful to royal rights, and shameful to the English people. He declared it null and void of all validity forever. The following month, civil war broke out between the barons and King John. The king raised an army of mercenaries to fight on his side, and meanwhile the barons invited Prince Louis, son of the King of France, to accept the English crown. Bolstered by this request, Louis invaded England in 1216, and later that year was still at war with John when he died of dysentery on the 18th of October 1216. With King John dead, many of the barons relinquished their invitation to the French prince. The charter had new life in John's son, Henry III. Henry was only 9 when he became king, and in November 1216 a new version of the charter was issued in his name to ensure support from the barons. In 1217 another version of the charter was issued when the French were finally dispelled from England. This further protected the rights of barons and limited the crown's ability to levy tax. There was also a complementary charter drawn up, the Charter of the Forest, pardoning existing forest offences and imposing new controls over the forest courts. People now began to refer to the larger document as the Great Charter of Liberties, Magna Carta Libertatum. Before long, this was abbreviated to simply Magna Carta. In 1225, upon his 18th birthday, Henry reissued Magna Carta, reaffirming his commitment to its principles. Surely from here it went on to be that document that heralded in the power of the people, democracy, and freedom. Well, actually no. The king and the barons continued to fight civil war. At one point in 1258 there was even a coup d'etat. By 1297, Henry's son, Edward I, had won the war with the barons. In return for new taxation powers, the king reissued the charters of 1225, and these are those which remain in statute, in law, in the United Kingdom today. So, what's so important about Magna Carta? After all, in the 13th century, its stipulations only applied to a very small percentage of the population. Well, in 1265 it saw the first summons of Parliament in England, government, power not just wielded by the king. By the 17th century, opponents of King Charles I did use Magna Carta to regulate his royal authority. Sir Edward Coke said, "Magna Carta is such a fellow that he will have no sovereign." And throughout the centuries, Magna Carta has been referenced as defense against tyrannical rulers, autocratic maniacs and despotic leaders. It is the promise of individual liberty. However, as John Paul Stevens, former US Supreme Court Justice, said, the significance of King John's promise has been anything but constant. Perhaps the best way to understand Magna Carta's importance is to examine what was written. Originally, there were 63 clauses in the document. Now, 3 or 4, depending on how you count them, are still counted as law. One of these defends the liberties and rights of the Church in England. Another is concerned with the liberty and customs of London and other towns. But the third is most important. Clauses 39 and 40 state, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned, or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed, or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any other way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals, or by the law of the land. To no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right or justice." In other words, this document established trial by jury, the right to your day in court, as opposed to trial by combat, where perhaps a king could choose a champion to cut your head off so that he wins in the eyes of the law. Magna Carta is important because it is the document which challenged the king, by extension the Pope, and by extension God himself. This document challenged the apparent natural order. So, whatever name the document was known by in 1215, its place in history as a foundation for the rights of people is undeniable.
Hey man, what about America?
What?
America. Read 'em.
Okay, if you must.